My name is Mario Stark, or Mario for short. I'm the CEO of Vivior. I'm very happy that this evening we can have Dr. Lance Kugler here, who's going to talk about how he's using Vivior in his practice. So that's when I shut up and leave the floor to Lance. And if you just tell us how you use Vivior, what works, how you can help your patients and your staff making the best decisions. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for having me. I appreciate this very much. We've had Vivior for, oh gosh, almost close to a year, I think, was when we first started using it. I think it was actually closer to June or July, so not quite a year, a little under a year. And we've kind of gradually ramped up in how we're using it, and we've got a pretty good flow to it now. There's still some kinks to be worked out, and we're constantly kind of modifying how we're using it. But we can give you a little bit overview of how we use it. There's two of my optometrists that work here with us are also on this. Actually, I think all three of them are on. Dr. Anderson, Dr. McIver, and Dr. Hyatt. And we might ask them to chime in as well, because they have a lot of experience on the clinic end of it, how we're using it. But what I thought we would do is focus less on the technology, because my understanding is people on the call have already been exposed to this or even used it a little bit. And so we'll focus kind of more on how we're using it. And then we've got some case studies to go through on some examples of specific patient situations where we've used it. But I think that really probably the best use of this time is going to be some discussion. So I'll try to keep the prepared remarks short so that we can have plenty of time for discussion, if that's okay with everybody. So what I'll do, oh, it's telling me that I can't share my screen. Can someone give me permission to do that then?
Yes. Can you try again?
I'll try now. It says I'm a co-host.
Yeah.
That sounds very official. Okay.
Yeah.
That work?
Can see your screen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. So, like I said, we'll kind of skip through some of this overview here, but I think, big picture, I think we all think we're pretty good at matching technology to the patient's history. We take a 30-second history and then we match an IOL that they're going to live with for the rest of their life in their eye. It's kind of, when you think about it in those terms, it's kind of crazy that that's how we do things. But I think it tells us that the IOLs do a pretty good job for most people. As they've gotten better and better, we can kind of match them to a certain extent. But I think that a more detailed history on how people are actually using their vision does lead to better outcomes in general. So I think this is really what Vivior is doing, is giving us data to go by, not just history. So, and again, this is more the overview of the technology. But I think the key feature, a couple things: the ability to demonstrate to the patient that you understand their vision is very, very powerful. So we know in refractive surgery, we know from our refractive surgery experience over the years, we meaning refractive surgery community, that the more that the patient feels that you understand them, the more that they're going to believe that you're able to fix their vision. And so the two things are directly related. And so I think one of the most powerful things about Vivior is we can demonstrate to the patient that we really do understand how they're using their vision. In fact, better than they understand it. And so that's a powerful message. And so I think even just, committing them to doing a data gathering for 36 hours and then presenting the data, that alone is a very powerful part of the process. And so we found that to be very useful. The actual matching of that data to a lens is also powerful, but almost secondary. It's almost, once you've kind of figured out how they're using their vision, then the matching algorithm is is impressive, but I think less even critical than just demonstrating the data collection. So the other thing that we found interesting as we've used this on a number of patients is how much it varies. You know, I think we all kind of used to think everyone needs distance, right? That's important. We all know we need distance vision. And then I think the near vision, we assumed there was people that needed intermediate, and then there was people that needed near. And that's kind of all there was to it. And it turns out there's a lot more to it than that. There's a lot of nuances in how people use their vision. Sometimes we see peaks at distances that are kind of surprising, and I'll ask them, you know, what are you doing that's, you know, 27 inches away? And they'll have an example. They'll say, oh, well, that's where my computer is mounted at work because I can't move it because it's on the wall or whatever. Or I'm a telemetry nurse and the monitors that I'm looking at must be at that distance because that's what I was doing the majority of time that I did the Vivior. Things like that pop up. So people do have unique things. And I think that the diversity of it all has been interesting to us. So this is kind of the steps of the flow that we've come to over the past several months. And I guess first of all, it's important to understand how we do things at our practice. It's a two-step consultation process where the patient comes in and has their diagnostics done, all the diagnostic testing is done, and they meet with an optometrist at that visit, and they do the anterior segment exam, posterior segment exam. And that visit, the optometrist will typically tell the patient what's most likely going to be the procedure that we're recommending for them. So if it's RLE or cataract surgery, then oftentimes we'll also recommend Vivior. Now, we don't always do that if the circumstances don't require it, or if there's a barrier to that extra step of the Vivior, then we don't always do it. But if we are going to do it, that's where it's recommended. Then they do then the technician programs the device, dispenses it to the patient at that time with instructions, kind of goes over what that means to do this test. Then the patient comes back and they'll meet with me or one of the other surgeons. And at that visit, the technician uploads the data to the server first, and then we review that data. The surgeons review that data and all the diagnostics that they had at their diagnostic appointment all at once. And then based on that, we make a recommendation on what we're going to recommend. And then the counselor works with the patient to make that recommendation possible. So that's the flow that we have. Who are we choosing Vivior for? We find that it's best if they wear glasses or contacts full time because it's easier to mount the device to existing glasses. So it's been a little bit of a barrier. If somebody doesn't wear any glasses or any eyewear at all, it's harder to get them to do this. We do have some Plano glasses that we can have them use, but it's more of a barrier. We also find that for patients who are resistant to having refractive services added to their cataract surgery, we find that the Vivior kind of helps them understand what we're talking about when we say we're going to correct your vision and your focus. So your cataract and your focus, because they often don't understand that difference. And so the Vivior data that it provides and the process that we go through with it does seem to hammer that home to them, that there are options, there are differences in what the outcome is going to be. And for some of these patients, seeing this data really opened, it's enlightening to them, like, oh, I didn't realize that's how I use my vision. I didn't even realize what you're talking about when you said you could fix far or close, all these things. So it helps. We also find it useful on the type A personalities, the people who have really high expectations. And you can tell in that initial evaluation that they have high expectations, or they'll say things like, well, I don't want to wear glasses for anything at all distances. And I want perfect distance, and I want perfect near, and I want perfect intermediate, and everything perfect. And we say, okay, well, you're going to wear Vivior, and we're going to kind of sort through this so you can understand where the limitations are going to be in your vision. So we find it useful for that. People who we have had less success with, if they're taking their glasses on and off all day, then the Vivior data is not very good, because it needs to be people who are more consistently have them on, so that we can get accurate measurements. If they have multiple pairs of glasses, it's also a challenge. And there are just some people that just don't understand the technology or anything technical. And whether that's because of a mental status situation or just resistant to anything that was, made after 1955, one of those two groups, we tend to avoid it. We keep them just in our tech lane, where we have them with the patient kits. We keep a spreadsheet on our shared spreadsheet on our server, so that we keep track of the serial numbers and the check in and check out and who has them, so that we know where the inventory is. And then we also keep track of what the outcomes have been, like, did we complete it? What was the surgical decision? And then did they schedule? And then we kind of tweak, and we track this separate from our regular CRM. We use Salesforce CRM. And so we track this separately from what we're doing in Salesforce for the purposes just of evaluating Vivior. And so far, we've used it on 46 patients so far, and as part of the trial that we're doing, 42 of them have been surgical candidates. 27 of them scheduled what we recommended, the premium recommendation. So that leads to a conversion rate of about 64%, which is a little bit lower than our overall conversion rate. If you look at practice-wide conversion rate for cataract surgery, it's closer to 80% to premium. But remember, this is a self-selected group, so we're selecting a lot of the people who need this, because the people who come in and say, I don't want glasses, I don't want contacts, I know what I want, a lot of times we won't add the Vivior step to it. But for the people who are less motivated, we add it. So it's a lower converting group. So I think 64% in that group is actually quite good. I don't have a perfect control group for it, because this is a new process, but it's very interesting. So a couple cases on examples of how we use it. So this is a 57-year-old who doesn't wear contacts, isn't sure what kind of glasses she's wearing, but we know she's wearing progressive. She's hyperopic with quite a bit of SIL. And let's see, she doesn't work outside the home. She babysits and does arts and crafts and paintings and things like that. And she wanted to do Vivior because she was not interested in doing anything outside of what she said what insurance covers. And we said, gosh, you got 3.5 diopters a cylinder. You really need to do we really need to fix your vision too. So we're going to do Vivior and kind of help you with this process. And it was very interesting. I think when you look at how she uses her vision, she does these arts and crafts and things like that, but she's a very distant dominant. I mean, she's a 65% distance patient with another 40% at near, and then, I guess 16% near, 20% intermediate, and quite a bit of time in dim light. I thought that was interesting too. So she's spending a lot of time in dim light at mostly distance, which is kind of surprising. And her near needs are spread out. I mean, she's all the way from 13 inches to 40 inches away. So she's got a pretty broad range of what she's trying to do. And so when we put the IOL matching to it, we kind of showed her, we said, look, well, if we do this monofocal lens, we're going to get you about 61% of the time, but the other 40% you're going to be in glasses for all these things at all these distances. Oh, you mean I would need glasses for this, this, and this? Yes, you need glasses. Oh, but none of my friends have glasses after cataract surgery. Yes, they do. They're wearing them for readers. You aren't aware of that, right? So we have that whole conversation. And then if we use a trifocal, it filled in really quite a few of those gaps. But it was interesting when we did a mix and match with a Technis 275 in one eye and a 3/4 in the other eye. It actually filled in a few more distances that the Synergy trifocal wasn't fixing or wasn't meeting for her. And we kind of have found this in a lot of our patients, is that combination seems to have a broader range than the trifocal itself does. But in this case, it added another few percentage to the areas that we could reach for her. And she was very excited about that and ended up doing that. We did the toric version, so we're able to fix the stigmatism and the near vision and the far vision all at once. And she ended up 2020 J1 in the right eye, 2025 J2 in the other, and 2015 J1 combination between the eyes, and was thrilled with it. And yeah, I think she would have been disappointed if she hadn't done that premium product had we just said, okay, well, we're going to put you in the bucket of not interested. I think she would really be missing out. Second patient is a 55-year-old who came in for refractive surgery, works on a computer most of the time, also an active cyclist, has this mild myopia, kind of used to seeing up close for most things. And we really wanted to kind of figure out exactly, how much are you using this near myopia that you're used to? And is this going to be a big change for you depending on the lenses that we choose? That was kind of the thought process behind doing the Vivior. And what we found is that he had a really sharp peak at 26 inches of where he's using his vision, and the near, so-called near, less than 20 inches away, was very rare. So this guy really lived at distance and intermediate. And so it's interesting because if you look at if you match him, obviously with a monofocal, only going to get about half of the vision need. If we do a mix and match with a monofocal and a Synergy, we got the near pretty well, but we're missing that the intermediate where he is. And what turned out to be the best combination is a monofocal in one eye and a Technis 275 in the other. And we just nailed that huge peak for him, hit both of those peaks with that technology. And he also had a strong need for night vision because he was young, active, drove at night, that kind of thing. So he was concerned about glare and halos and things like that. So that combination of dominant eye with a dedicated monofocal and then a Technis multifocal in the left eye seemed to give him the best result, predictable results. So that's what we did. And he ended up 2020 J1 between the two eyes, and very, very happy. And so I think that was a valuable use of the technology for us too. And then the third case, 61-year-old with cataracts, and he is a pastor, and he was all about the price. He was the guy that came in and said, I only want what my insurance is going to cover. That's all I want. And he led with that. Okay. Well, he's a minus 850 with 2.25 SIL. He's a pastor. He's got a strong need for distance, a strong need for near, I thought, right? So it's like, okay, well, let's kind of look at what's really going on here with your vision. And, it confirmed what we thought. I mean, we said, he's spending a good half his time at distance and the other half the time at near, and he's doing a combination of points at near. And we had that whole conversation and kind of went through the different options. And it turned out that the trifocals seemed to fill in the distances for him. He was very concerned about having both eyes the same because he just had fears about monovision and depth perception and things. We said, okay, fine, they can be the same. And to have them both the same, it seemed that Synergy lens was going to be the best option with the toric. And that's what we did. And he ended up 2015 J1, and he's not wearing glasses when he's working or doing anything. And he's thrilled. And was very appreciative that we had taken the time to educate him and not just take him at his word that he wanted the cheapest thing. Because when people don't understand what the options are, what the differences are, a lot of times they'll default to price. And so that makes it easy for them because that's a reasoning they can use on themselves. Well, I just went with the lowest price. So then they can use that as reasoning. But if you can demonstrate the value in the different price points, then suddenly they can't use the cheapest thing as their justification anymore. So it's pretty interesting how that works. So that was kind of what I had prepared, and some cases. And so maybe just kind of open it up for discussion and see what everyone would like to talk more about.
Great. Thanks a lot, Lance. The floor is open. You might need to switch on your phone, or you can also type a question or a comment in the chat. No
Hello,
question?
Mario. Mario,
Yeah.
this is Paul. Could I ask a question?
Sure. Go ahead.
Dr. Kugler, that was really an excellent presentation, and I love the 3 cases that you presented. Could you comment a little more about what you made, the comment you made on for the last patient regarding price? Is the Vivior technology helping you and your staff to kind of break down the barrier with patients regarding price?
Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, that's probably our primary indication for using it are the patients who don't understand what the value is if they choose something other than a basic cataract surgery. So for the patients that come in like laser focused on, they want whatever their insurance is going to do, it really helps kind of demonstrate to them what the differences are. And so we found that to be extremely valuable in that scenario because they don't understand. They don't understand. First of all, the concept of near and far vision is very foreign to people. Like they don't understand. Like they're like, well, I've always been. Let's say somebody's this guy's -8 or whatever. He's always been able to see up here. Okay, he thinks he's coming out of surgery still being able to see up here. Right? We've all seen that. Everybody thinks that they're going to keep their near vision if they grew up myopic because they've always been myopic. So even just hammering that point is very helpful because you can show them what's going to happen afterwards. You can say, look, you're going to need glasses for 65% of your life if you choose to have this option because you're going to lose your near vision. So when you've demonstrated that, it seems to be a powerful way to demonstrate that compared to just telling them. Now, you obviously for years we've all practiced with only telling them, and we do a decent job of it. But we also have those people who just no matter how much you explain to them, they don't get it. So I think it's helpful in that sense. And it's also helpful in just the general process of collecting data and measuring them and how they're using their vision makes them trust more what you're saying and recommending. And so I think that process, it's part of that overall evaluation and diagnostic process.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Kugler.
Because go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, in general, this is true of refractive surgery, cataract surgery, eye surgery in general. It's hard to think of a product that costs as much as we're selling that you can't try or test first. It's very difficult. So, if I go, test drive a Mercedes, I can decide for myself what that's worth because I took it for a test drive, right? We can't do that in our field because by the time you make if you're going to test it, you've already purchased it. You can't, there's no way to try it without actually doing it, right? And we rarely find patients that come back to us and after having refractive surgery and say, oh my gosh, this turns out this was worth a lot less than what I paid for it. They never say that. They always say, oh my gosh, this was the most amazing thing I ever did. I would have paid double, right? Like the price thing becomes irrelevant once they've experienced refractive surgery, most of the time. So since we can't do that, I think a reasonable proxy, or maybe the closest we're going to get, is something like what Vivior is doing, which is showing them what this could be like should you do these options. And then it's a little easier and a little more tangent for them to put that to a price point.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Kugler.
Yeah.
Other questions, comments? Seems to be a quiet group here.
And to that point, we've used it in younger, and we didn't include any of those examples, but we've used it on a few younger refractive surgery patients too. These are people who are long ways from cataract. Maybe they're in their mid to late 40s and they're thinking about some sort of blended vision or an option like that. We've used it in those patients, particularly ones with high expectations, and we've kind of used it to measure how they're using their near vision so that they can feel better about the target that we choose. So let's say there's a 48-year-old. I can think of one guy in particular. He's 48 years old, and we had a long conversation about blended vision, and he had some unrealistic expectations on how much near he was going to be able to have, or at least I was concerned about those expectations. So we had him do Vivior and kind of determine exactly what target we should use. So we decided on a -1.25 target. So when he comes back and he can't see the 13 inches, we can say, well, remember, we decided we were going to abandon that range in order to make sure you could see this peak. And so it takes away some of that explanation post-op too, because you made that decision pre-op based on data, not just made some sort of mistake. So that's also part of it.
Do you have several brands of lenses in there?
Yeah. So we had our Vivior clinical team or whatever it was upload the combinations or the options that we use here. So just about everything is in there now. I think there may be a couple combinations that we want to add, but for the most part, it's all in there. And so you can choose, all those different combinations.
Have you done some mixes with the PanOptix and the Vivity?
I actually haven't done that because I'm underwhelmed by Vivity, and I this is my own personal bias. I feel like what we're trying to avoid with Vivity, meaning like glare and things at night, you're better off just putting a monofocal in. So I've done a lot of monofocals in one eye and a PanOptix in the other eye. Mm-hmm. But I don't find a great addition by having Vivity in the dominant eye. In fact, I think it just confuses things. But that's an option you could put in there if that's something that you've liked.
Is there I came in a little later. Is there a cost? And how do you pass that to the patient? Do you include that in your package?
Well, for right now, at least, as we're kind of part of this early clinical trial here, we're not charging the patients for this. That could change as things evolve, and we haven't tackled that question yet. So I don't know exactly how we're going to price it. But for right now, we're not charging for it, and that's probably what we'll continue to do, because I think it's paying for itself in in these increased conversions in this group that I think probably wouldn't have converted nearly as highly if we had not used this technology.
Mm-hmm.
There are costs to it. I mean, the cost of actually using it, and then there's, you know, there's clinic time and staff time associated with this too. I mean, there are some flow things that need to be worked out. What I would, since we have the CEO on, I will share my wish list for the Vivior. The biggest thing that I would like to see is the ability for the patients to extract the data from the device at home and upload it so that they don't have to come in with this device. It seems very archaic that they have to come in, we have to plug it in and upload it. If we could just do it remotely, that would be great, because we're doing about 95% of our consultations through telemedicine these days. And so a barrier to using Vivior is we can't do it with telemedicine. They actually have to come in. And so that's a barrier to us using it. If we could somehow get the data from them at home, we could streamline this, and we would probably use it on much higher percentage of people.
Yeah, I hear you. We're actually working on that to really have a solution where patients could upload the data themselves. And as you said, then there would be no necessity for them to come in. You still have to get the device back, but you could just mail that. So that's certainly something we're aware of and we're working on.
Yeah, they could mail it, or they could even bring it in on the day of surgery. You know, yeah. There's a couple different ways I think that flow could go, but if you could get that, that would be great.
Understood. Anything else you wish for? Since we're all here.
What am I forgetting? I see Dr. Anderson and Dr. Dixon on here. Dr. Hyatt, is there anything I'm not thinking of that we said we'd like to see? I know one of them was for patients who don't currently wear glasses. I don't know if there's a way to make that a little easier for them so that it's less of a barrier there.
We did just order some Plano glasses that have Plano up top with a bifocal, like with a 250 ad, to try and try that out. So I think we dispensed 1 or 2 of those last week. So we'll see how that goes. But maybe sending those pairs of glasses with the initial kit would be helpful too.
Okay. I mean, we've looked at different modes of attachment, but I mean, the point is that we need to have the device really fixed somewhere on the head, on the one hand, and the other hand, it needs to be unobtrusive. Like you could do a sweatband and put the sensors in there, but I don't think you'd want to wear that all the time. So after a long consideration, to fix it at spectacles is just the probably still most unobtrusive and practical way to do it.
Yeah, I think to have Plano glasses readily available would be helpful for people that wear contacts or don't wear anything.
The only other thing I would add, and this is a really, really small detail, but the colors of the adapters that hook to the glasses are really similar. So I've noticed some patients are struggling to tell the difference between the dark gray one and the black one. So that's a really small detail, but maybe helpful.
Yeah, great. Actually, I never heard that before, but I think it's a good point, especially if you have, I mean, again, the patients don't have perfect vision. That's why they come to you. So that's a point, and we can easily make the dark a little darker and the light a little lighter.
Yeah, one of the things that I didn't mention in the talk, but we're pretty excited about is we're going to start offering myopia control treatments as part of our, we're actually doing it through another entity, but it's part of our practice ecosystem. And we think there's a role for this in that myopia control as well, to kind of help, determine how many hours kids are spending on screen time and that kind of thing, or any sort of near vision. So we're interested to explore that too.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, we have done some explorative clinical trials where we've seen quite a difference between myopic and non-myopic kids. And also one surprising fact from the data was that we looked at near vision. And of course, we define near vision anything below, 50 centimeters. So that's 12 inches or so. But what we saw in the kids, that near vision for them sometimes means like 4 or 5 inches even, that they're really watching their smartphone like this. And then you have this extreme near vision that you rarely see in adult patients, because I mean, I hold my phone like this and not that close in the front of my head.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, we can share that data with you. And we've also developed a special application where we look at different risk factors for myopia. So I can send that to you if you want to explore that.
That'd be great. Yeah, because I mean, have you looked at correlating that with treatment protocols too, or is it just data at this point?
At this point, it's data, because we really have been focusing on the cataract application and also for progressive spectacle lenses. But we have some early results that, like as I said, I'm willing to and be happy to share. But at this point in time, it's more about, well, let's understand what these young patients are doing. And then, of course, you have to take the informed decision about, well, what kind of treatment would be best.
It's good. Yeah, the other group of surgeons that I think would probably do very well with Vivior is, I think that the group of surgeons that maybe doesn't use premium technology all that often. But if you have somebody who's interested in it, or you want to grow your premium practice, I think it's helpful, because what I've found is there's a group of, well, a lot of those surgeons kind of want the patient to make the decision. They give patients a bunch of brochures on lenses, and they say, well, here's what you can do if you want to spend money, and you know, you might get some glare and halos, and it's more complicated, but it's an option if you want it. Well, no one's going to do that, right? It sounds terrible. So I think for maybe people in that category where they're not as confident in, you know, recommending it, I think that it's helpful, because it helps the surgeon pick ones that is most suited to that patient. And I think the patient is going to be more involved in the decision process. So the patient can look at the data, and they can say, oh, I'm interested in that. What you say that lens is going to do, that's what I'm more interested in, as opposed to an abstract notion of distance and near and that sort of thing. So I think it can also be helpful for that group.
I have a question. So how are you getting over the hurdle? I mean, if you're doing, say, we're doing like 5 to 10 upgrade lenses a week, maybe even up to 15, but you would need a number of these then to pre-analyze your patient to be able to come to the conclusions with each one of those patients.
Yeah, so we have a whole cabinet full of these. I don't even know how many we have. But yeah, we have several of them, and we kind of track the inventory on a spreadsheet, and at any given time, several of them are out. Patients are using them. So yeah, you definitely need a supply so that that's not a barrier. I mean, you don't want to get in a situation where you got to wait for someone to turn one in before you can measure the next patient, because you're right, that would influence the flow.
Yeah, I think we have about 12 of them. And we're recommending like 4 or 5 per week, and 12 has been more than enough for us so far.
Yeah.
Okay, I think if there are no more further questions and comments, I again would like to thank Dr. Kugler and his team for making this possible, and like everybody for giving us the time to attend the meeting. If you have any question that pops up afterwards, I want to get more information, please feel free to contact me or John, Francis, or Damita. I will be happy to support you and answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, and people are welcome to contact us too. We're happy to answer from our perspective anytime.